All right, everyone, we start off today talking about Nicholasroske, or Roske? Not exactly sure. Went to Brett Kavanaugh's home with a firearm and various other gear, and zip ties and shit. Apparently with plans initially to kill Brett Kavanaugh, to assassinate him, explaining that he's been having mental issues. I'll get into the mental issue side of this because it does appear to play a fairly obvious role. Had contacted police saying he was planning to do that or harm himself or something of that nature, and that he was angry. The reason why this happened is specifically because of the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court leak. So he decided to go from California to Brett Kavanaugh's house and attempt to kill him. He's been captured and charged with attempted murder. Let's be entirely clear about one of the reasons things like this happen, and it's really propaganda from the legacy media. People are consuming nonstop vitriol, which is telling them that there are armies of hateful people out there, everyone hates each other, everything is grim and falling apart, and by the way, if X, Y, or Z happens, our society will collapse outright, and it'll be Handmaid's Tale or 1984, which I think we approximate already anyway, but things will get really, really bad. If you have spent years and years convincing people that we're just shy of Hitler taking control again, and you have someone who is ideologically driven, as he appears to be, but also has apparent mental issues, it is possible to drive them over the edge, because they end up in a far-left echo chamber that tells them, it insinuates that something needs to be done. You see all of these people protesting outside of Kavanaugh's house and Barrett and others. And then it's only one small step for them to say, well, I feel terrible anyway, 'cause there's the mental illness component, purportedly. I feel terrible. I might as well do something, go out with a bang here and do something positive. So I think that I'll go and assassinate a Supreme Court justice. It's really, if someone is screwed up, it's really not that big a jump. By the way, this is going to put a little bit of a damper on the gun control arguments that are currently being made. Again, a leftoid trying to kill a justice who is probably going to rule in favor of nationwide concealed carry fairly soon. That would have affected that case, potentially. And let me get into a little bit of the political ramifications. If Kavanaugh had been killed by Roske, or if he had been able to fire a shot, injure him or something, take him off the bench for a while, if that had happened, it would have caused pandemonium. And the liberals who right now are effectively smugly smirking over this and saying, well, thoughts and prayers and things of that nature, of course, Kavanaugh very much alive and well. I think you would have seen a massive amount of backlash against your ideology. I think it's entirely possible that the left-wing justices on the Supreme Court would have said enough is a fuck enough too, because there is an in-group kind of way in which SCOTUS tends to work. And they'd be condemning you as well and telling you to back the hell off and shut the fuck up. You probably still wouldn't end up getting your way on Roe v. Wade. You might get a more narrow decision a la Roberts, but you'd still have a majority that would be voting in favor of possibly repealing it, and certainly would be voting in favor of upholding the Mississippi abortion law that's at the central question of the adjacent case. So you may end up seeing decisions that tilt even more against you, simply because you've done this. Also, you're too close out to the midterms, probably, for Kavanaugh to be successfully replaced, because there'd be so much public pressure on the Senate to not stack the court with a liberal, with a Biden appointee. Probably end up, after the midterms, not having the votes to replace them at all, and you'd end up with an 8-justice dysfunctional split 50-50 style Supreme Court for several years. It would have caused some major problems. I don't think that it would have been a positive thing for the country, even if you don't agree with, like, Kavanaugh. It's like imagine you have a liberal court, and they're making liberal decisions, and some messed up person who's been told by Fox News and Breitbart over and over again about how evil their decision making is and how it's destroying the republic were to have done this. The legacy media that right now is barely covering this, they're taking a definitive hands-off approach with everything adjacent to this, with respect to everything other than he had a gun, effectively. They're focused on the fact that he had a firearm. They're not focusing on their own culpability with regards to promulgating this sort of thing. And this is not the first time that this has happened. This happened with that goofball that shot a bunch of Republicans at the congressional baseball game. Can't remember his name. House Majority Whip was injured, was taken out of commission for, I think, months actually, almost died. Was shot in the hip actually, and I think had an infection and so forth. Others were injured. Thankfully, there wasn't a massacre that day because the person didn't know how to shoot straight, I suppose. Really, though, we can expect more of this kind of crap because you've got such a partisan dysfunction within government. You have a Biden administration that basically says the same thing the legacy media says too. Demonizing enormous swaths of the population as inherently violent, ironically enough, causes people on the other side who are on the edge of going crazy to begin with to act violently. Well, why wouldn't they? They're being convinced that effectively they're fighting against a resurgent attempt at another Third Reich. They're being told that they're fighting legions of Nazis and evildoers who want to enslave women and kill gay people and be completely out there, just beyond the pale, and revert to a worse version of the mid-19th century. If you think that's actually the case, and you're not mentally, you don't have a lot of self-control because you're already, crazy, basically, you don't think that there could be violence. This is totally unforeseen. CNN doesn't contribute to this at all. And the worst thing is that there are content creators that are independent that do the same thing. It's nonstop blackpilling. X hates Y. We're going to hell. Everything's terrible. There's never any semblance of an attempt to tell people, hey, there are ways that you can shelter yourself. Like I tell people, and I do this more routinely now for a reason, because I do have to cover a lot of negative news, a lot of bad things like this that happen, that they should improve themselves, become less reliant on power structures. They should read a book. They should do something, and Bidenomics is terrible, do something on the side to try to get more money. They just put a little more effort in. Should you have to? No, you should be able to relax more in life. It's all about pragmatism. There are ways that you can prevent yourself from suffering, or at least throttle back the amount of suffering so that you're not the one that has to sit in the bread line for an hour while Bernie Sanders hands out a cold soup. The lamestream media has in part caused this. The other part is I have a feeling this will reinvigorate the debate over the mental health issue, which really is more important than the gun control side if you're trying to fight crime. Well, really, the most important is to go after, if you're talking about gun deaths, suicide's the big one. That would be mental health. People feel alienated, people are depressed, etc., and they blow their head off. By the way, they just do something else to kill themselves if they didn't have access to a gun. But if you go beyond that and look at gun crime, thankfully even events like this are relatively rare. A crazy person trying a political assassination. Most of it's gang crime. Legacy media acts as though it's all a bunch of far-right white Nazis that are trying to kill as many minorities and children as possible because they've gone off the deep end. This is an example of someone who clearly went off the deep end. And he didn't do it in a vacuum. He credits the leaked Roe leak, the Roe draft, which the legacy media has widely promulgated, reported on nonstop effectively, trying to make it a midterm issue. And they're partially culpable. Very few of them have condemned the leak itself as a once-in-a-lifetime breach of decorum at SCOTUS, showing that the court, which is supposed to be explicitly non-political, I know that's a joke, but they're supposed to be, has become politicized. At least one of their staffers, which probably works for one of the liberal justices, let's face it. And so it's rather a shame that people aren't analyzing this from any perspective other than whether he had a gun or not. Or they're saying, well, lock up the crazy people, bring back asylums. Well, unfortunately, unless there was a long track record of this individual acting out, you may not be able to do much about that. Mental health is an important issue that is contributing to crime. I think economics is too, and of course we can address that come the midterms. That's about all. Peace out.